Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Low Code Campfire. This is number 84 for February 10, 2023, and we'll talk about the DNN Summit a little bit today and other things. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantanap. This is an event we do Fridays during this hour to get together, talk about techniques, challenges, experiences, things that you're working on. We encourage you to bring something to show and jump in if you have ideas and suggestions for your fellow Campfire attendees. This is all skill levels welcome. We record all the episodes and they're out on our YouTube channel. So that is youtube.com/plantanap. And we encourage you to subscribe and set the alarm bell so that you know as soon as we post new content out there. We run an agenda that looks like this, where we say hello, and then we'll go around the campfire. We'll do first call, anything that you want to get into right away. We'll take a look at some point to contributions to our community website, feature request, any topics that were submitted in advance. And sometimes we talk about ghost stories, difficult areas that you've encountered in the product, or dark corners, someplace that you've explored recently that you didn't even know was there. But after an hour or so, we'll jump into Afterglow. We'll turn the recording off and sit and enjoy each other's company for a few more minutes. This is a meeting format, everyone is welcome format. So jump in, show and tell. Use the chat window, but do get involved. We have very few guidelines. We ask you to be nice and also to turn off to mute your microphone if you've got noise going on behind you. Sometimes it gets real quiet. That was like last week's, and I have long threatened but never followed through on demonstrating my singing voice. So let's stay away from that. You can submit questions and topics in advance. You can use this QR code to do it, but that link is also in the emails that we send to you. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning. Welcome.
Hello, Dale, Patrick, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
So, Mark, have you recovered at all from your last couple of days?
Hi, yeah, I think you're talking about running the summit. Yeah, it's a lot more relaxful today than it was the last couple of days. Off to an easier start.
Well, I know that I was just responsible for preparing one session, and that was time consuming enough. So to be over all of that, but anyway, good job. And I definitely enjoyed the places that I got involved with. Eventually figured out the technology, and then I'll forget it again between now and next year.
Yeah, well, I encourage you to see the replays. I think I missed quite a few of the sessions because I was working, but I intend to watch them all.
It was that's really a good point. There's what were there, 4 tracks for several sessions each day. So I don't know, what was there, 24 or so.
I think there's 26, yeah.
Sessions overall, and plus the keynotes and things like that. So good.
You were there, had a couple great sessions.
Yeah, I was. I certainly enjoyed George from our office presenting about automated testing. I thought George is doing a good job for us, I think, and being able to make that more accessible to others. And I kind of came away with it from that inspired. I think even I could do that, so we could help out with our efforts with regression testing.
Isn't that sort of the motto that you are trying to encourage with all aspects? Even I could do that.
Exactly.
So thanks for asking. Was there anybody else in attendance here? Or anyone else at this summit?
I was going to ask.
I don't recognize any names as being there.
I saw and I wasn't paying attention the whole time. It looked like there was about 120, 130 people. Was
Oh, Nora, yes, I see. I do recognize your name. So, yeah, there was 151 registrations.
nice.
It's a good number.
Uh,
It was a good event. You guys that weren't there, I encourage you to attend next time.
Mark, is there any discussion about having it be a in-person event again at some point?
Oh, yeah, there's lots of discussion about it, but there's no decisions, and there's not really a clear path forward. There's money situations, there's venue considerations and travel. So it's a bit complicated. So we continue to talk.
Yep. One of the benefits of doing the virtual, of course, is that they're all recorded, and it's kind of built in that there's this, you can attend the other sessions that you miss and all. I don't know if you did one virtual, it's almost have to be hybrid, I would think.
Yeah, that's part of the discussion, definitely. Part of doing a virtual hybrid is the complexity of pulling it off correctly and not messing it up with the Wi-Fi availability in the room and cameras being where they're supposed to be and glitches during the show. So, it's all part of the consideration.
Yep. I know for my part, I know I get nervous talking in front of people. Doing the fact that I do this a couple of times a week, I think is probably helping me with that. But from a virtual standpoint, it's almost easier. But you get into a room and you give a talk. You get into a virtual room and give a talk and get almost no feedback, no audience reaction, nobody nodding their heads or walking out the door. And so you just have to plow on through it.
Yeah, it's like that.
One of our frequent Campfire guests, attendees, Don Gingold, gave a talk, and I attended his, and I thought he did a really great job of kind of that classic delivery format, coming up with a nice way to. It didn't just start out technical; it was relating the problem and then providing a solution and giving very concrete things at the end. So there's lots to learn from others in doing a thing like that.
Yeah, Don is great. He's no stranger being in front of the camera. Yeah, he's good.
Well, he mentioned something about heading up his local community theater, so he might kind of be a natural at that. I don't ever seek the limelight personally. I do enjoy being able to do this a couple times a week. All right, so we're at our first call segment. Does anybody have something that you'd like to bring to the fore?
Morning, I have a couple of target questions. How's the audio in this headset?
Well, hello, Jim. Come on, let's do it.
In the form initialization, how do you target a label on a control?
I'm sorry, it's a little bit muffled for me anyway, Jim. How do you target what?
A label. Let me change headsets here.
Okay, sure.
I think he's saying targeting a label, like maybe a button label. I'm not sure. That might be what he's.
So I was working with somebody else recently that you can just put a token into a form label, right? So if you
can
pre-initialize something, send a value, for example, out to a form token that can, even if it's a hidden field, you can then consume that in the label and it'll get initialized there. So
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
much better. Much better. Yeah.
Stay with the old technology. Forget the new wireless headset. So my question was, when you're initializing a form, how do you target the label of a control so you can change the text?
Okay, yes, we were just talking about that a little bit. I've worked with somebody here quite recently, but what you can on this idea, you can send if you add a hidden field with custom value type field onto the form, you can push values into that during pre-init. And then your label can actually have a token that references that.
Okay.
So it's not too hard at all.
No, I can do that. I just didn't know if there was like, I tried like dot label after the control and stuff like that. And it's like, no, that's not working. So.
Yeah, as we've all learned, I'm not a JavaScript guy. There's probably a great way to do that, but I don't know what it is from a low code standpoint. That is.
Yeah, I think the easiest and pretty effective way that I've used many times is tokenizing the. I think Jim, when we met the other day, I was talking about how you have to make sure you uncheck the auto checkbox on the specific element that on the specific form item that you're like, whether it's the button or a field, you uncheck that box so that you can have a separate label from the actual ID of the field.
Right. Okay.
And then put a token in there.
Okay. All right. I can do that because since we talked the other day, I've been putting a number of hidden fields out. I was having an issue, just so others know the context here, of using JavaScript to do some calculations, and just what we think was a scoping issue. And Patrick helped me in one of the office hours. So.
Talk about office hours for a second, would you, Patrick?
Yeah, so I would say they're underutilized, but but Jim did jump in the other day, and just so everyone's aware, if you usually sometime between 10 to 30 minutes before the call, I go in and check to see if there's any signups, and if there's not any, I usually just close it so that I can go ahead and make other plans for that hour. But up to it, at the absolute cutoff, up to a half hour before the call, you should be able to go up there and find it and sign up. And yeah, we've had some nice accomplishments in those calls, so I encourage you to take advantage of them.
So for reference, on our community website, community.plantainapp.com, there's the live help button. You can click that. And we run at least 2 sessions a week. And the hope is, we can make exceptions, but the hope is that we record them and put them out on our YouTube channel so that others can benefit from the knowledge. So hopefully, if it's proprietary, we can pull off on that, but hopefully we can share it live with you, and then others can benefit. But that's the live help. So the thing we were just talking about, if we were to add a text field, just kind of show and tell here. If we were at a text field and this has something like first name, and this was the box that you were saying uncheck, because we want to have first name have a good ID. But if we want that to be dynamic, we could add a hidden field with a custom value, and this could be first name placeholder could be the name of it, for example. And during initialization or pre-init, we could add a create update token that would have, and you could do any kind of calculation you wanted here, but you could target first name placeholder, and we'll target it with Spanish version. Too lazy to ask even what that is, but so then in your first name, instead of displaying first name, it could be that placeholder, maybe some other text. And so when you run that form, the pre-init computes to the hidden field, and then the hidden field gets pulled into the label. So 2 steps, but pretty easy to accomplish.
Your practice to make a hidden field to be in between those two, because couldn't we just make that token on init?
I've done that. Yeah, I've actually even used just a a token that I created in tokens in that field too.
Oh, so you're saying that this would work without the hidden field?
Yeah.
And that kind of brings up an interesting area. But let's do that. We'll first get rid of this placeholder, just delete it entirely. And so now it's going to be created dynamically and not stored anywhere. And yep, it still works. I think I do that because in our current setup, there's this whole life cycle of tokens issue, and tokens that exist in pre-init cease to exist after initialization is done. And so, for example, in this version of this, you wouldn't have any way to find out what that first name placeholder is. It doesn't exist anymore. And if you tried to use it in a button, for example, it wouldn't exist. So the first way I demonstrated it, it persists because the initialization creates it, and it's on a hidden field on the form, so it exists. And so doing it that way kind of helps to avoid the what seems to me the inevitable issue of what if I want to reuse this thing, right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
For anyone following along behind us, the on pre-init has this help text over here that tells when you can use them and when you can't, and it just points out what I just said, that they don't exist after the initialization phase is over. They just exist right up until the point that the form gets drawn for you. And we have an ongoing internal discussion to figure out if there's a way that we can have that be otherwise, because it's a very common thing that people do things on pre-init and then want to use them later in JavaScript or later in actions. And if we could make them automatically persist, that would be great, but we currently don't. And so it's kind of an area of confusion. You can see it on the form that it had a value and an existence, but now you use it in a button or in some JavaScript and it's empty. And why is it empty now? It doesn't continue to exist. So that technique of putting it on the form will, in a hidden field, will explicitly get you around it. Just for those of you following along, that whole discussion about why is it important to automatically persist comes in when you're using dynamic fields, and so you want to the information that you gathered to be able to create the dynamic fields, you want to be able to reference that, and there's no easy way to reference that. You have to really work at it in some form or fashion. And I think Matt could shake his head yes, because he's done a lot of that dynamic field stuff. You're so accommodating. All right. Yeah, so that was a good question, Jim. I draw nice.
You know, can I extend that
Please.
subject just a little bit? it occurs to me that this comes into play when you go a little bit beyond what we just talked about, which would be the case if you wanted your token to be a dynamically created token, such that, let's say, if you have some kind of registration form, you've got child 1, child 2. I would like the child 1 name to be substituted in on a button for whatever reason. But I
Mhm.
would like to be able to put a token in there where I could say child and then bracket and then the token name, which is holding the value of child 1 or child 2 or child 3. So the token would be dynamically created by evaluating some text together with a token. And that request of dynamically creating tokens is already out there on the feature requests. But I just thought I'd bring it up here since we're talking about these tokens.
So again, not a developer, but my meager understanding of this is that tokens are primarily a back-end thing, meaning our code that runs when you either as the form, there's code that runs as the form gets rendered and then it stops. And now we're off. So everything that happens to get the form out is back end. And now the form is there and there's JavaScript and things going on. We don't have any token processing in the front end that I'm aware of. Does that sound true, Patrick? Am I lying? We don't have it's. But then
Right,
when you
yeah.
hit the submit button, all the stuff on the form gets shipped off to the backend code again, and then tokens continue to exist. So there's that. I think that's another way. If we did the thing that we're talking about, it would probably help with what you just mentioned, Mark. That there would be some level of front end tokenization that's there. I think it
Could
would
maybe be two round trips, maybe an API call to go back to the server to get the newly evaluated or newly created token.
Well, and that I think adds to the complexity. The one that you're talking about was a token that gets created and it exists only on the form, right? You did add child 1, and so now you've got it. It's only there until you hit the submit button, but you want it to appear on buttons or be able to work with it on the front side, which I guess you can accomplish through JavaScript, right? You're doing that right now through JavaScript.
Well, in some situations, definitely yes. But in others, like if you're creating a dynamic form and you wanted those field names, if you're using tokens for like labels on fields and you wanted to put a dynamically created token so that you got evaluated twice, essentially. Once to put the name of the token together, and then a second time to evaluate the assembled token. Yeah, so
Doesn't the recursion option on the token evaluation give you that?
It would in the right situations. I think not while you are creating a dynamic form. At least I didn't see that option there. That's an action where you can count the number of recursions.
So yeah, for the places where those tokens exist in the back end, so in the button cycle or on the init cycle, yes, you can do multiple layers and done several things that rely on that, multiple replacements, but then those tokens go out of scope once the form finishes rendering. So it's not easy to replace them at that point.
Understood. So again, I'm speaking up. Sorry, guys. If anyone else has a burning issue, they should speak up and talk over top of me. Because I'll just keep talking. If you don't mind me asking, Patrick and Jim, just a summary level idea of what you were talking about with scoping issues with JavaScript and calculating the fields? Because I do that quite a bit, and I'd be interested to hear your takeaways from what you were talking about.
Basically, we were looking at, well, I have to, Jim, you might be able to remember even more than I, but Jim was running some JavaScript on a button, and he was trying to get it to, and I'm sorry, no, the link to the recording is not there, if that's what you were going for, Dale.
Mhm.
The JavaScript was, Jim, I'm having trouble remembering here. You might have to jump in and help me.
So yeah, so I'm trying to migrate a ASP.NET app over, and it used JavaScript. It's an inventory application where a person scans a barcode and it increments in JavaScript counters on the quantity of something they're counting, and without going back to the server. So we were trying to do it in the on-click JavaScript, but then at the end of that JavaScript, if the item, oh, we have a new item, now we have to, write, instead of incrementing it, we need to write that out to the database. So we aren't hitting, with every scan, we're not making the round trip to the server, just when the item changes. And I was having issues with trying to then, when it went onto the server and getting access to those JavaScript fields, once I was on the server, things were,
Right.
the reference to the fields wasn't working right.
Right. The that's what it was. Yeah. So he was using a execute JavaScript action on a button and trying to update a field on the form from that, and that's by the time that JavaScript actually runs, the field wasn't actually available to update. The solution was pretty simple. We instead of doing that, we put the value into a token and then did an AJAX refresh. The token matching the ID of the field that he wanted to update, and that worked well. But actually, trying to update a field with an execute JavaScript action on a button was not working. You could do it from the on change click. You can update a field from the on change click, but not in a execute JavaScript action.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. I just learned from you about putting something in a token and then doing the AJAX refresh. I like that. I think a tip I hopefully maybe could share would be, if when I'm using JavaScript to update a field, if you follow that up with another jQuery command to, I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, but it makes the field aware that it has been changed. So I think activate or dot something.
Scope refresh.
Yeah, it's refresh maybe. And I think I've played with a number of commands that are trying to do the same thing. I have found a happy spot that makes it work, but yeah, I think that would have also have worked to update the field and actually have the field know that it's been updated. So you can refer to it and get its value later.
Yeah, that may have worked, but I know that it was definitely different than when you put a field update on a it was behaving differently than when you put a field update in an on change click event. An on change click event is very straightforward. You take the value you want and you tell it the field you want to update, and that works. But this was not working that way.
And since Patrick and I talk, I have found some examples of code that I have not tried to sort of describe Mark's method. It's making an Angular reference out to a field element and getting the value that way, and updating it, and then redoing a refresh of that Angular element. But it was working, so it's like interesting, but didn't have to try it yet. So. I am seeing a different type of JavaScript issue, which is, the part of this project, it plays an audio sound when they do that scan. And I inconsistently, one of the sounds after it writes to the server is it comes back and gives them a audio sound that says the record was saved. And it's inconsistent when I put it in the action stack to play that sound. And sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. And I'm thinking there's some sort of timing or something going on, but I don't know if that's, or if it's just putting it in the right place to play a sound. So there's a mystery here of how JavaScript really interacts with an action form. So for me.
Yeah, that's going to take some trial and error. I don't have any insight on that one, but it's a curiosity. I'd be interested in working on that. Figure that out. So related to that, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate your comments on this, Dale, Patrick, anyone. What I do when I have calculations that I need to happen on a form, but I don't necessarily need to submit the form at the same time. I have oftentimes put the JavaScript that does the calculations in the on-click event of a checkbox, and then whenever a field is updated that requires things to recalculate, I just do the click event of the checkbox, and that does. For me, it seems to be working extremely well because I have complete access to all the fields using their tokens to refer to them. I don't have to spell out their ID and everything in JavaScript. I just use their token. It all recalculates and works well. It's all in a checkbox. And I hide the checkbox because people don't need to see that. I just call it, it calculates, and we move on. Is there a comment on best practice kind of thing?
Not from me. It sounds like a good solution to me. I've already said I'm not the JavaScript guy.
So that's interesting to me, just because, so that allows you to reference that checkbox from another field with just with the bind variable. Is that the right phrase?
Yeah.
The bind variables, and say, set that checkbox to 0 or set it to 1, and it runs your on-click script.
Yeah, I think you could do it that way. The way I do it typically is I do the form fields dot checkbox name dot click. So that's a jQuery command that just clicks it.
Is the form, is the checkbox rendered on the form, and that's okay with you?
I use display none in the styles, so people don't see it. I think if they went looking for it in inspect and they found it, I don't think I would care. It's just calculating. So Jim, the benefit of giving it a click command instead of telling it to value of 1 or 0 is I don't have to know what value it is. Like if it's already 1 and I'm trying to send it a 1, then it may not fire, and so I don't need to figure out which value it is. I just send it a click. Whatever it is, it just clicks again.
Different.
Because I'm just doing that same concept, but with a button. I have a button with an on action, and I'm firing that click event off the button. But that means I have to put a piece of JavaScript someplace that's not easy. Always, I have to remember where I put it.
So along the way here, we were talking a little bit about live help, and this is, we don't get a lot of attendance at live help, which is, and that's fine. If you guys know what you're doing and don't need it, that's great. But when it works right, here's what happens. We say you can look in the past sessions of live help. You can find the topics that were covered, and there's a office hours recording. You can click that and play it. And Patrick, it would seem to me that a search on this so that you could type JSON and get a list of classes that
Yeah, that'd be cool.
be useful. But anyway, this is where they're published. You just click we have the future sessions that are coming up. So for next week, two office hours set up, but you can look at the previous sessions and see what was there if there was anything. Good.
The office hours are great. I'm glad you guys are doing it. I've been in there. I should be doing it more. Thanks for doing that.
Absolutely. Let's see what else we talked about. Summit. Last week we mentioned the knowledge base. Wondered if anybody gave it a try. As we said then, it was still a work in progress. We're still filling it full of content, and it's not a speedy process, but it's functional, and we would love the feedback to know whether it's at least inform giving you the right what you would expect. So if you get a chance and want to try it and give us feedback, that would be great.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people provide some suggestions and point out some things that weren't working properly, and that's been really useful. So yes, we are reading the feedback when it comes, and thanks to Mark for providing some code that could be useful for highlighting hits on the text that's being searched. So we're leaving it alone for the moment, so people have a chance to look at something that's reasonably stable, and then we'll collate together the feedback and other ideas that have surfaced, and work up a new and improved version.
There's nothing like beta testing. I've mentioned to some of you in here that I had an app that got some miles on it for the first time last Saturday, and had a lot of people come back and say, that was great, but could it also do this? And so getting that, how do people really use it, and what confused them, and having that, I have 3 pages of notes, and so now I have more work to do, but that getting true feedback, and then I feel good that I got close, but now we can get better, incrementally better. I had a topic starter here. I had someone ask me about how to do something and whether or not it was in the documentation. And it occurred to me that, and we've been having this discussion internally as well. We have this, we're working, we have Angel in our office is working to bring the documentation up to date, and it's better every day. But from my perspective, we have a lot of ingredients and not a lot of recipes. You can see the ingredients and understand, okay, here are the things that I have to work with. So now if you want to put together a particular scenario, you have to grab from the ingredients. And I was just wondering whether anybody thinks in those terms, what kind of recipes would be useful to have in our documentation. And that's kind of an ongoing question, right? It doesn't have to be, oh yes, I have this list today, but if you do, if you have common scenarios that you think might be useful.
I guess in a way, that's kind of what we envision the part of the knowledge base site that we haven't fully implemented yet, but the ability to write articles. It seems to me those would be kind of like recipes,
Good point.
I find myself going to the old docs site and looking at the how-tos often to get those recipes as I go back and forth. So I think it's an important thing to have, because it may just say this is the way to do it, put a hidden field here and populate the hidden field and then change your text to type. So I think it's a good thing to have.
So, Jen, I see your question. You asked about Zoom, an API with Zoom specifically to create a webinar registrant. And
What a great question.
And we, in fact, have actually, I've done a form here recently. It's a form, a workflow, some tokens to keep your credentials. So yeah, I have a good example of that.
Okay,
So
that's awesome.
every
They
time,
just-
every time every time I go in or one of us goes in, it's mostly me, but sometimes Dale or Peter also goes in and creates a new office hours call. Office hours is being mentioned a lot during this call, but every time we go in and create a new office hours call, that's exactly what's happening. Dale set it up so that we get the Zoom meeting is created automatically when we set that up.
So that's
That's awesome.
a meeting that gets created, and
It
that
works reliably and awesome.
very reliably. Yep. And then for webinar registrants, I have this form that I created. Oh, come on. And this is just a form that we can link to, but if you wanted to register for the Low Code Cafe, you could put in first name, last name, optional company name, and register, and it would do that. And so we have the code that we'd be happy to share with you with that. I really should put this out on Campfire so that
That's awesome. Is it JWT or server to server OAuth? What is it? What kind is it?
OAuth.
Okay, cool.
So at the end, once you have the behind the workflows that are behind this, you just pass it what webinar ID and occurrence and the information, and that's all that's necessary. So it can end up being very simple. There's a couple of things behind it, so I'll get it there out there for us.
Awesome, thank you.
If you guys promise not to spam our registration link, using our credentials would be out there on that. So again, be nice. Ben, are you still with us today? I was gonna try and link you and Bogdan up on a discussion.
Who?
Ben Santiago.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. I'm just driving in the car.
Okay, all right. Well, so Ben has asked me a question, and I've been going back and forth with him on the forum about parsers, and I'm trying to figure out the state of this thing. And so tokens used to have parsers, and I don't think they do anymore. And I was hoping Bogdan has a recollection of where we're going and if I'm giving good advice. So this is just like I say, I'm trying to drag him into the conversation here. Do you recall, sir?
Yes, I recall removing parsers. Yes. Yeah, so I guess when we switched to the new interface, we gave up on parsers with the idea that now we have workflows, and with workflows you can do same things. Do a server request, run a razor, and afterwards you have much more possibility to do extra processing. I'm not sure if you have the exact functionality to achieve what the XML parser did, which I think was a XSL transformation, if I'm not mistaken, Ben.
So just for illustration purposes, we had the parser was a feature. After you had a token, you could run a parser, and in this case, I happen to use the XML XPath parser just to prove this thing out. But it would let you pull out content out of your result, so do some additional processing. And it was here in our old interface, and it's still, but when we converted to when we added the tokens interface, you can get to tokens now on our configuration menu, and we no longer have it. We've removed it now as a separate item from the manage menu. So you can't get back to it anymore after, I think, version 118 or so. And at some point, we actually pulled the parser code out. So the tokens still work at 118. By at least 124, they're gone. And so the parsers are gone. So that's one of those areas where if you're using the parsers, you would have to know that. And that was the same answer I came to, Bogdan, to that a workflow token would let you do any kind of post-processing you wanted to do. But I wanted to make sure of the direction. And I just thought
yes. When we redid the interface, we didn't migrate the parser code at all.
Yeah. So Ben, hope that was a direct answer that you'll be able to use.
That was a direct answer, but it's an unfortunate one.
But what?
It's unfortunate because that just basically means that upgrading beyond 118 is going to break a whole lot of code for me.
Yeah, if we can help point you to the right post processing, but yeah, it is a breaking change. And when I was looking through that, I didn't find that we've announced that particularly well at what version that happened. So
yeah, I looked briefly and I didn't see any documentation that this was a major breaking change, which is why I posted that question, because I was kind of confused if I was missing something or not.
Yeah.
How many tokens do you have, Ben, that needs to be rewritten?
I honestly don't have that number off the top of my head. Like I said, unfortunately I'm driving in the car right now somewhere, but there's a few. It's not so much as a lot of tokens. I mean, I have a handful. The problem is the usage of them. I use those tokens in a lot of places. So to convert tokens now to workflows will completely change the logic and the business logic of how they're being used. And truth be told, I don't even know if that's going to be feasible, because in some respects, I believe I use tokens where workflows aren't accessible. I have to double check. Again, I'm driving. I don't remember every nuance off the top of my head.
I don't think I would panic just yet, because you should be able to replace the tokens that you have with workflow tokens that return the exact same result.
And have this exact same name?
Yeah, exact same name. So it would, I think you'll find that when you get into it, it's not, I mean, once you generate a workflow that does the thing, you can then convert it into a token with the same name.
Yeah, you can even edit the existing token, change it to a workflow type token, as long as you have the exact same output that you had for the token before. Then it should operate the same.
But Ben, I'm happy to hear that feature was used by someone. Because yes, we one of our big initiatives at some stage was to add telemetry to the product, because we have so many capabilities, and we always wonder, is anybody using this?
Yeah, I was using it because of API calls to a third-party system that we have, a help desk, and it was returning a lot of information in arrays, using XML. And in some cases, I just needed to filter on one item, but their API did not allow for filtering. It just returned an array. But by using the parser, I was able to say, well, pull me out just the one item that has the following value for the following field. And then that got me what I needed, which was just one item. So, you know, now it's just, I'm gonna have to rework the logic and prepare for moving beyond 118.
Yeah, I would think that from a ease, I mean, sorry that you encountered a breaking change. From a safety standpoint, we should be able to create that workflow and a token like the other one and prove that it's getting the same result, and then with that swap it out, and you should be able to do that at 118 without breaking anything, and then once you move forward from there, you'd be good. So there's a safe path. Yes, sir.
Can I share my screen for just a moment?
Please do.
And I just want to, just for the benefit, I understand, Ben, that you're probably, you know, not where you can see your screen, but for the benefit of others, I just wanted to share something that, you know, it's interesting that I just went to look at one of my testing instances that I use a lot, and look at this workflow I found. I just thought it was kind of, I didn't even know, I did a, I looked in my actions, and I searched for XML, and I said, oh, I have a workflow. And this isn't doing exactly what you would want to do. You'd want to actually take the values from the XML and output them into tokens. But so the XML is, I don't have an XML input for this. I just have a bunch of XML in here. And it's kind of cool that it just, so I'm executing actions to actually pass back a list. And it's an HTML list with breaks in it, but it takes the XML and transforms it into that. So I think it's just a good, you know, and then all I'd have to do is take this into, go into my tokens now and use this workflow if this is the result I wanted to get for my token.
For the benefit of people following along after, would you mind going ahead and making a token out of that? Because it's going to take about 18 seconds.
Sure. I certainly will. Just call it XML, something simple, and go into the definition, run workflow, and then oh, here we go. So here's an improvement idea, is that these are alphabetical. There it is, yeah.
The fact that it shows up at the end is kind of nice. You can just scroll to the end normally when you create a new workflow. It'll be at the bottom.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're ordered by the, yeah. And when you do that, it gives you the output parameters that you had for your workflow show up as the in this drop down, so you can choose your default output. So I'll choose result because that was the only output that I had for this. And we will save and test that. And there's the same result that I was getting, because I don't, you know, if I had input parameters for my workflow, they would, when I clicked save and test, my parameters would automatically show here, but I had no input parameters for this particular workflow. So I don't have any parameters showing up here. I just have the XML that's already in the workflow, and there is the parsed output.
So the same in a case where you're converting, you'd use the same inputs. Your workflow would have the same inputs as the token that he currently uses, and then the same outputs, and we would just be able to replace it. It would happen very quickly. It's unfortunate that it was a obsolete feature, but there is a solution for it. Cool. All right, we are 5 minutes to the hour. If anybody has any last thoughts or questions that you've been holding off on, now would be a great time to bring them in. There haven't been any contributions to the website, but if you are the idea, if you're new to the call, we have a website where common things or things that might be useful for other people are stored out here, and you can, if you're a participant in Campfire, you can gain access to this. So I am going to set up the form that I talked about for Jen with being able to create a webinar registrant, and I'll put this out here as a contribution so that she'll be able to look at it and mimic it in her environment.
Thank
But we
you.
don't have, you're welcome. And then, but we don't have that yet, so nothing new to talk about there. On our feature requests, we have a couple of things. First of all, we had somebody who was going through the our academy and going through the course and talking about, found some ways to talk that the workflows could have been, the editing workflows experience could be improved, or the SQL console experience could be improved. And so we've included those that they were emailed to me. So I've placed them out here just so that they're placeholders.
And actually, Dale, if you would click on the one you're on right now, I wanted to point out that I added a comment there and pointed out for Jen specifically, because I know you're on the call, Jen, and that I added that I think another thing that we want to improve is to somehow have a way to allow administrators to set a role-based control to restrict the console, so that certain roles would only be allowed to do select queries.
I think that's a tremendous idea, because being able to give access to certain people, the ability to select without wandering off into the dangerous areas of update from or drop from, or so a little bit more fine-tooth comb. Just pointing out that we have the ability right now to either the admin can turn it on or off, so we can restrict and provide a high-level control, but being more granular would be a great idea. And also, this one here, you posted, this was in response to something you encountered, right, Patrick?
Yeah, well, it's something that would have made my life a little bit easier with something I'm working on right now. And so I think it'd be pretty useful if we had a new auto-generated entity action that happens when you create an entity that's that has a many-to-many relationship with another entity. In other words, when you add a list of entities property, and if we created another action that was a read all child entities. So
if you have books that have chapters and you want to read all chapters related to books, you would be able to then iterate through that list.
Yeah, so you'd pack in, you would pass in the book ID, and then you would get the list of related chapters.
And this is something that is only possible right now through SQL.
Yeah, really, it's
entirely possible, but you have to understand the table structure and and how to do a SQL query, and so it would turn this relatively common thing into a low-code experience. So anybody that bumps against this or anything else, please feel free to vote them up.
And that one vote you see right there, that's me. So that's the only vote it has so far. I upvoted my own suggestion.
Let's see, the upvote, where do we upvote these?
There you go.
Yeah, just click the button and it upvotes. There's also this blue sponsor this feature button. So if somebody was really excited about it and wanted to do it, you can click in and explore whether you can sponsor and move something that you really, really want to the front of the queue. Okay, with that, we've now hit our hour. There's last chance for anyone else to give a parting shot here, but otherwise, in a moment, we will move into our Afterglow segment. All right, thanks for spending the hour with us. Again, hang on for in just a minute. I'll stop the recording. We'll do Afterglow, but if you don't join us there, we will see you again next week. Thanks, everyone.